think about how we're thinking today. So if 99% of the interaction with customers is outside the transaction, are our resources allocated correctly? And yet when you look at it, most of our resources are geared towards getting people to make the transaction. So we're not aligned when it comes to resources. Customers actually see one experience with the brand online. So this idea that we would work in silos, which we all know we do in companies, even though we try not to, it naturally happens. But the customer only sees one experience. So how do we actually align ourselves so we make that into a valuable experience for the lifetime? Decisions for e-commerce are often happening before anyone ever gets to the point of transaction. Now there's plenty of data out there that shows this. So even though e-commerce transactions are still a small amount of the total, people are making their decisions through search way before they ever get there. So search is now becoming a decision engine. This is something Lucas Kadri pointed out in the book, and what Bing is doing. And I think that's absolutely right. It's gone from where you query and you just simply ask questions to how do I make decisions and then actually purchase something. So the big question then becomes, how well do you really know your customers, and how do you really know what they want from you? And then how do you know that, and how do you keep pressure on that? Okay, so from the book itself, I'm now going to talk about specific insights from the book. There was a range of people that I interviewed for it, Michael Dell and Mark Benioff, two founding CEOs who I think are just tremendous in their insights. And then we had some really great people like Paul Beverly, president of Gemalto Digital Security Company, CIOs like Herman DePrins, who's based in Brussels, CIO. Paul von Ottenried is CIO for Bristol Myers Squibb. And it goes from there. And then Mark Adams is the CMO of General Mills, did the forward for the book. So there's about 35 people from the Fortune 500 in there. And so here's some of the insights that we learned. So when I looked at everyone that I interviewed for the book, these are the qualities that jumped out at me as being separators of these folks who all changed the game for their organizations. The first is that their vision is incremental and continual. So they're not actually, their big ideas are not so far out there they can't do them. They're constantly incrementally innovating, constantly. So Michael Dell is a great example of this, where that's what he does every day. He's always looking to make something better. Mark Benioff is constantly looking to evolve the Salesforce.com platform. I mean, that's the mark that you see. Then ability to see gaps in the market without full research. So I think of Joel Babbitt here, and Joel you'll hear it from. But Joel's sitting there going, I'm looking at all the environmental blogs and sites, and I see this huge gap in the market that there's no research to support at the time, that if we do this, we're going to hit the mainstream for environmental news. And it turns out he's right. So how did you know that? Well, you'll tell us more about how you do it, but you have to have the guts to do that. Plans align and change based on customer insights. These are folks who change on a dime based on what they learn from their customers. They're not wedded to plans that got locked in for the year, and they have to stick to them because otherwise they'll get in trouble. They're, I wouldn't say break the rules people, but they all talk about how they evolve the rules, I guess is the way to say it, as the time goes on. Desire to fight off antibodies. So we talk about this where every company has people who they smile and look good and they are friendly, but they don't want to change. And they think of all the different ways that they cannot change. And people who are innovators love to debate them and change their mind. They kind of relish that fight in a way. And then intense desire to learn faster than competitors. All the folks that I interviewed, they learn faster, they learn wider, they're just like thirsty for knowledge, And so it's hard to explain that, but that's another common denominator. So now here's another thing that leaders say. This is actually a real exchange. So Michael says, you can guess who Michael might be, was when I was at Dell. But he said, do you have a credit card? And I said, yeah. He said, do you know how to use it? I said, well, yes. And he said, great, use it. And get this blog up in the next 2 days. And I said, okay, good deal. And that was it. But his point was, we don't have time to debate innovation. We have to, if we know that something's right, we got to do it. So this idea that we have to over-plan and over-committeize and that doesn't work. And that's one of the things that I learned from him, that again, you see as a common denominator. So, then we get into what C-suite leaders realize. So, if I think of, again, collection of all the conversations, what's most important for people? One is that CEOs and other C-suite leaders are realizing that customers really are shaping their reputation with or without their help. So it's a matter of, does the company want to become a relevant peer in the conversation? The other thing is that the individual person is realizing that their brand is now associated with the big brand. The days of hiding as a C-suite exec are over. Budget, the leading companies, particularly in CPG, are already at 50% digital spend. The leaders already know that in the next couple of years, we're going to be at 70% digital spend. There's still industries and companies that are at 10 to 20%, but those companies are now really falling behind significantly. Then there's content. So news cycles is what we used to always talk about, and we talk about content cycles. So it's not as relevant to have a spike. It's more relevant to actually get a total impact of conversation over 365 days. Employees. Recruiting and retaining employees is not about getting a job out and getting people to talk to you. It's about having you build the right perception for your brand so people want to come to your company and proactively search you out. And so that's a campaign that you do that never ends. The other thing is that employees should be starting to get more involved in being advocates for the brand. And some companies are doing that. Customers, customer support in leading companies is starting to become part of marketing because people are realizing that it's actually part of the brand experience. And if the person in charge of the brand experience is the CMO, then there's absolutely no reason to separate the two. And that's not happening in a lot of places, but it's starting to happen. Innovation is that the best ideas are from crowds of smart people. So, we did IdeaStorm at Dell. IBM has innovation jams. Best Buy has like a tag trade, I think it's called. But companies are starting to realize that they're a heck of a lot smarter if they're tapping into their employees. And then issues, you can see issues days and weeks before they ever hit the press. So the rule of thumb now is becoming, if you're dealing with an issue when it hits the press, you're actually old school. So now you need to figure out how to get there earlier. Okay. Now, one of the things that affected me personally, mainly because I'm a baseball fanatic, is when Moneyball came out. And this is Michael Lewis' book. Michael Lewis is one of my favorite authors. And he wrote this about Billy Beane, Oakland A's general manager at the time, and other folks. And what Billy Beane did at the Oakland A's is he figured out that actually what mattered is that if you looked at the total impact of a player, that was far more relevant than what everyone was telling you. So in other words, if you had someone who was slightly overweight but had hit more home runs and scored more runs, who cares what they look like or how fast they are? So he started to build his own algorithms and build advantage and get the A's in the playoffs with far less money. So we actually use those same kind of concepts now for algorithms that we build. I probably should give credit to Billy Beane, actually, under each one.